I mean, there's so much to discuss, Stephen, when it comes to this trip and this relationship between the United States and China. Maybe we could start with perhaps the elephant in the room, or the most recent development, the Middle East, Iran. That certainly wasn't something that was perhaps thought to be on the agenda, certainly from the Chinese side, when this meeting was set up months ago, with those developments, happening in the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks or so.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, we had Donald Trump saying he's going to bring up the war in the Middle East, the war in Iran, when he meets Xi Jinping, and then all of a sudden, just before getting on the plane in the US, he declares, oh, we don't really need China to solve our problems in the Middle East. I guess he wants to downplay expectations. Perhaps he thought he's not going to get anything really from this visit, so you certainly shouldn't be promising it. But part of the problem with that is that they just have different views on it. I mean, you might think, well, it makes perfect sense why Donald Trump would say to Xi Jinping, come on, you've got very close relations with Iran, why not ask them to open the Strait of Hormuz? Well, the Chinese government would say, we are talking to them. We've already said we want there to be a negotiated settlement. The problem is, what's acceptable to Iran and China in terms of a negotiated settlement is not the same thing as what's acceptable to Donald Trump. One crucial point of difference, for example, is Xi Jinping would say to Donald Trump, look, we think Iran should have nuclear electricity. We should have a capacity for nuclear power. Now, Israel and the US might say, well, we don't trust them. We don't think they should have that. So there you go. That's just one clear point of difference there. I mean, others are that China blames the US for starting the war anyway, and they want a complete, proper ceasefire before the People's Liberation Army, Navy, or anyone from this country would go anywhere near the Strait of Hormuz and start cleaning up this problem, as they say, a problem that has been created by Israel and the US.
Yeah, and when it comes to Iran, just help us understand the relationship that Xi Jinping and China have with their country. I mean, we know that they import a lot of energy and a lot of oil from there. We also know that just last week, the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, was right here in Beijing speaking with Wang Yi, the foreign minister.
Yeah, and that can't have been a coincidence. I mean, obviously, the Iranian foreign minister was here, so a few ducks could be lined up before Donald Trump's arrival. I suppose certain assurances needed to be given to Iran. And it's all about oil, really. We have the US government, for example, putting sanctions on various Chinese companies for buying Iranian oil, and the Chinese government says to them, keep doing it. So they're not far from caving in on this. I mean, every time the Trump administration tries to whack China with sanctions, the government here has great capacity to weather that. We saw it with the trade tariffs problems, or even sanctions on individuals, and importing oil from Iran is no different. The Chinese government would say, well, why can't we import oil from Iran? Why shouldn't we? And so again, you have this, that's something they could be talking about over the next few days in the various meetings they're having, including banquets and tea ceremonies and whatever.
Yeah, we'll get to the agenda and what Donald Trump will be doing while he's here in just a bit, Stephen. But just another word on Iran. We know that China imports 90% of what Iran produces. So while they may have differing views, they may not want to be appear to be leaning on them, they do in fact have quite a bit of leverage if they wanted to use it.
Yes, and this is why you'd love to know what's really going on in the discussions involving Pakistan and Iran behind closed doors. Now, it could be that they're saying, we want you to be part of these talks. Maybe you can go this far and not further. I mean, who knows? Because, yeah, if all of a sudden China was to say, we're not buying any more of your oil, that's a big hit on Iran, of course. I think they're not going to do that, though, because they also don't want the US to win, if I could put it that way. They don't want countries to be able to be pushed around by the US, and they want to be able to say, look, come to us, we're China. We don't stick these unilateral sanctions on you the way Washington might. And so there's just so much of a benefit in all this, despite the fact that that war is hurting the Chinese economy. Because China has such deep pockets, such huge oil reserves, it can weather this in the way that other countries can't. And so, I'm sure they would be saying, we want you to talk. They want it to come to an end, but they want it to come to an end on Beijing's terms.
Yeah, and that's a crucial aspect of it, and something that we'll be returning to, I suppose, a theme, whatever the topics of discussion are going to be with President Trump, as we continue to watch Air Force One has come now to a complete stop on the tarmac at Beijing International Airport. The steps are being pushed into position. We'll soon see the door open, and then we'll wait for President Trump to emerge, and we'll hopefully get a closer look as to who's going to be receiving him as well, which could tell its own story, perhaps. Another bone of contention between the two countries, and there are several, Stephen, to get through. Perhaps a quick word on Taiwan, because just before coming to this meeting, making his way across, the Pacific and on a 17-hour flight to get here, President Trump did have a few words about Taiwan, talking about America's support for Taiwan.
Yeah, and if the Middle East is the US's big ticket item, then Taiwan is Xi Jinping's big ticket item. He has said, and the Chinese government has said repeatedly, that it's the most crucial, sensitive subject, as they put it, between the two world superpowers. China doesn't want the US to be selling weapons to what it sees as a rogue province, a self-governing area, a self-governing set of islands, and yet it is in US law that Washington has to come to the defense of Taiwan. And so, it is a really sensitive subject. But the extent to which the weapons are provided, what types of weapons, there's talk of building this Taiwan dome, similar to a dome in Israel. Now, that requires a lot of expensive equipment to be provided by the likes of the US. It's something that, well, Beijing doesn't want, because I guess at some point it wants the option of being able to take Taiwan by force, should it choose to. And so for that reason, Xi Jinping will be bringing this up with Donald Trump. Now, what worries some in Taiwan is that Donald Trump, to what extent might he cave in? To what extent might he sell them out, even to a certain level in terms of providing certain weapons and not others, if he thought it meant doing a deal with China on something that he wanted? So, we'll be getting the official readouts of these meetings, but there are also discussions that take place behind closed doors, stuff we don't get in the readouts. And you would love to know what Donald Trump and Xi Jinping are saying to one another, on the Taiwan front as well. Yeah,
we expect them to have a one-on-one. We're still waiting for confirmation on whether that will be with media, whether that will just be with interpreters with them. We'll be, getting across that when it does happen. In the meantime, though, we have just seen the doors have been opened on Air Force One as we wait to see President Trump emerge to sort of officially, I suppose, kick off this two-day visit to Beijing, as he'll be walking down those steps to be greeted by various officers and dignitaries waiting to receive him. Let's see a bit of movement by the door, a bit of a peek to see if everyone's ready. We are ready, Mr. President, for whenever you are to come down those steps.
It's the endless wait, isn't it? You get these leader visits now. Come on, we're waiting for them to come out to see what type of reception they're going to receive. It can take a while, because you imagine they've got to have all their passports ready and what have you. Well, partly because when they come out of the plane, this entire entourage, they're going to jump straight into vehicles and drive out of the airport. There's no security checking or anything like that. So,
there is a sizable delegation as well. Business leaders are, of course, part of this delegation that's coming to China to visit, as well as part of this two-day visit. Leaders from Tim Cook, we understand, is here, Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, as well as Elon Musk. So there's a lot of high profile. Direction that trade and business opportunities is also going to be key for this meeting. Stephen, what do you think we might see there? Any more tangible success, given that the other issues like Taiwan and Iran may be a bit more tense?
If we'd gone back a couple of months, it would have all been about trade, about tariffs, about doing deals and what have you on the trade front. I think people are pretty pessimistic about what might come from it. When I say pessimistic, I don't think people expect it to go backwards. I think in terms of the détente, when it comes to the tariff war, most of these business figures would at least expect the détente to continue, for there to be not a worse situation following this visit than we had before. As for any big breakthroughs or any, deals, probably more like symbolic things. You might get MOUs and what have you. I mean, like you mentioned, these high-profile business people who are here, Elon Musk, Tim Cook and the like, MasterCard, Boeing. You know, if there was to be some sort of a promise to buy some big ticket items like some more passenger jets, well, that's not nothing. But I don't think, especially given the fact that it was all kind of brought together so quickly at the end, that there'll be some massive big ticket items. I think if we get through this and it's kind of steady as she goes, that there's a feeling that the trade relationship is at least moving forward and not going backwards. I think most of these CEOs who've come along with the US president will be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable how things have changed just in the last few months. Really sort of thrown this meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Trump really askew, if you like. I mean, this meeting was supposed to happen a month ago, back in March, but that invasion or the attack on Iran by the US and Israel really put that spanner in the works in that regard. The last time President Xi Jinping and President Trump met was actually in Busan in South Korea as part of the APEC meetings last November. And that, you mentioned a détente, that was when the tariffs, the tariff war, if we can all remember, that dominated headlines, a year ago, and that was also put on hold a little bit. Where do we stand when it comes to these sorts of tariffs? Because President Trump has even faced pushback from these tariffs back home in the United States with judges shutting them down.
Well, I think it's, like I say, I think that from the point when that agreement was made, we're sort of locked into that situation now. And initially, it was only going to be 1 year, so that's, I suppose, would in theory take us up to
October, November this year.
Yeah. But if they were to both sort of recommit to that, I think it'd make people feel better, because imagine you're a manufacturer and you're making long-term decisions. If you're a producer of toys or whatever, and you were a Chinese factory, you were selling stuff to Walmart or whoever it is. I mean, there was a whole swathe of businesses that making just things like Christmas decorations. All of a sudden, bang! This season gone, and so yeah, for them they want certainty, and they would have thought for sure that it is a distraction to have this real war as opposed to a trade war taking up all the oxygen when it comes to these leaders meeting. I think there is an effort at the moment to get it back on the trade front. I think Donald Trump said that he thought trade was going to be number one in the discussions of the coming days, and we'll see if that is indeed the case. I mean, I'm sure that that's what the Chinese government would like to talk about. But it's just so hard to get away from the massive political stories, the massive, the real shooting wars that have been unfolding before us, and threats of such a war in Taiwan. It's just hard to dodge those big issues.
Yeah, it certainly is. We are just watching out for President Trump to walk down those steps from Air Force One. Just looking at the screen now, we can see the Beast, his vehicle, in position and ready. You can see a lineup of a welcome delegation there flanking both sides of the staircase where President Trump will be coming down those steps. Steve Lai here with you in Beijing, if you're just joining us, alongside Stephen McDonnell, our Beijing correspondent, keeping a close eye on developments here in the Chinese capital as President Trump is set to walk down the steps of Air Force One and begin his two-day visit here in China. Stephen, just talk us through then what he's going to be doing. I mean, we know from here he'll be going to his hotel where he'll be residing, well, not his hotel, but a hotel in Beijing. Yeah, where he'll be staying, and then things will really kick off in the morning. Yeah,
well, I mean, when he comes down the stairs, we might even get the US national anthem. I think, soldiers saluting and all this sort of thing. Usually it's quite dramatic before he jumps on board the Beast and heads to his hotel. I mean, he'd be pretty tired, I imagine, after that big flight, and there are a couple of huge days coming up, so perhaps his whole team, they want to at least get a bit of rest before they then move on to the real stages of the visit, if I could put it that way. Now, first thing they're going to do tomorrow, our time, is to go to the Great Hall of the People, which is where any leader would usually go to meet Xi Jinping. There might even be more sort of pomp and ceremony there. And then later in the day to visit the Temple of Heaven. If anyone's been to Beijing, they'll know the Temple of Heaven, this famous park, one of the great parks that come from the imperial era here, with UNESCO heritage listed buildings, what have you. So no doubt that would be quite something for him. I mean, it's been cleared of all the ordinary visitors, so Donald Trump can have a good look at it. And I think the fact that China is turning it on is that, that they're proud of it. The Chinese government's proud of this type of stuff. I mean, last time he was here, he went to the Forbidden City, for example, and was quite impressed by that. Well, at least he said he was. It's hard to upstage that, given that there was a performance there, I think I recall, of Peking Opera and the like. I think this time round he might just be going to have a look at it. There's a famous whispering wall there. You can whisper into one part, it sort of goes around the side of the wall and you can hear it quite a long way away. Over the years, I remember Gough Whitlam, the Australian Prime Minister in the 70s, when relations were still, first re-established between those two countries. There's a famous photo of him having a listen at that wall, so maybe Donald Trump will give that a try, who knows?
Yeah, it'd be quite a sight, it certainly would. It's a packed agenda. We're just waiting to see him come down the steps, so things will get underway then. Where do you see the priorities then for Beijing? We talked a bit about the Middle East, for Taiwan as well, but where do you think their real priorities are for this visit?
I mean, they want, it really is kind of trade. I mean, if you look at what the crucial things going in both directions, the US wants rare earths from China. China wants semiconductor chips from the US. And, here we go. We've got some action here.
We've got some movement.
There.
Yeah, President Trump there coming out from Air Force One, and he's about to give a bit of a wave, and then he'll start heading down the steps. A bit of a fist pump there, Stephen, as President Trump starts descending down the steps from Air Force One, and we'll wait to see who's there to welcome him once he reaches the bottom.
President Trump. A bit of the music in the background, some flag waving from the students.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, then we can see that as well. And President Trump has made this 17-hour flight from Washington, D.C., touching down just a short while ago, and now we can see him being greeted by dignitaries from the Chinese delegation.
I mean, it's going to be so interesting to see over the coming days if this does become a crucial turning point for China-US relations. I mean, they talk about FaceTime in the US, what comes from world leaders sitting down, speaking to one another, and I think both sides would hope that there is something more than just symbolism in this, that it does represent a shift when it comes to trade and cooperation. I mean, they're global competitors, let's face it. But they do also want to find areas to cooperate. Let's have a little look at the shots as they're unfolding.
Stopping on the red carpet to be a reception from the students waving flags. Stephen, do we know who that is with him that's welcomed him down?
It looks like Han Zheng. He's a very senior politician here in China. So it really is giving Donald Trump a lot of face that he's come out to welcome him, to say, to show that this is so important to the Chinese government. They're clearing the way to get him quickly into the beast, it seems.
Yeah, we can just see the top of Donald Trump's head there just as he makes his way down to his motorcade. the vehicle known as the Beast, heavily armored and protected, of course, to transport the president wherever he goes, anywhere around the world. This vehicle is transported before he arrives to make sure that he can get from his plane to his meetings, to his hotels, wherever it is he needs to go. You can see a lot of Secret Service there around the car as well. Stephen, this is the start of a two-day trip, and it's really sort of started with the red carpet quite literally being rolled out by China.
Yeah, and there's, we can see Elon Musk back into the fold, it seems. I mean, remember, he was fighting very publicly with Donald Trump not so long ago, and here he is walking out of Air Force One with him, about to jump either into his car or the one behind it to be given priority in terms of leaving.
Yeah, Elon Musk and Tesla have significant interests in China as well. A lot of manufacturing of Tesla vehicles takes place here in China as well. A lot of business leaders, not just Elon Musk here. Tim Cook from Apple is here as well, the Boeing CEO as well. Many top leaders from the big companies of the United States are making their way on this delegation with President Trump. As we can see the fanfare and the ceremony, the Guard of Honor as well, you can see at the top of the screen, welcoming President Trump down those steps from Air Force One and into the motorcade of the Beast. He's just saying his last goodbyes to those that greeted him here.
It is interesting, like you mentioned Elon Musk's factory. I was there just a couple of weeks ago having a look at the Gigafactory. And so it's a good choice, I suppose, for the Trump administration to bring someone who has built something so significant here. Crucially, he was given permission to build that without the requirement to sort of pal up, if I could put it that way, with a Chinese company. Tesla could build that factory by themselves in Shanghai. So it's also a good thing from the US point of view as well, to show what can be done when these two mega powers cooperate with one another, with US money and with the giant population here consuming goods. It's this type of cooperation I'll be wanting to speak about, in the coming days.
Yeah, it looks like the Beast is just about to make its way with President Trump, and it'll make its way through the streets to here in Beijing, where he'll be staying overnight at a hotel before things kick off in the morning. Stephen, just to run through again his itinerary tomorrow, he'll be meeting with President Xi Jinping. That's one of the first things he'll be doing.
Yeah, so he leaves here, has a bit of a sleep tonight. Tomorrow morning, first thing, greet all of the people and straight into meeting with Xi Jinping. So, it is a very important trip for both sides, especially for the Chinese government in a way to receive Donald Trump here, but also Donald Trump. I mean, he needs this at home. He needs to be able to show his people that his government is getting on with economic matters, and it's not just this unpopular war that they're focused on. And funnily enough, it's also the same for Xi Jinping. He needs to show the Chinese people that the government here is engaging with the other world superpower in terms of achieving economic results and not just fighting, I guess.
And Steve, I'm just going to pause you there for a moment. We do have another guest on the line to give us some analysis and a point of view. Charles Parton, former British diplomat in China and Hong Kong. He joins us now. Chris, really good to get your thoughts. We've just been watching President Donald Trump arrive on Air Force One, and his motorcade is now pulling away on the tarmac, making its way into Beijing to the hotel where he'll be staying. What's your immediate thought, or what are you thinking of? What's top of your mind when you see President Trump arriving here in Beijing?
Well, obviously we'll be looking for the outcomes of this, but I have to say that I'm not particularly optimistic that there'll be large outcomes from this. I mean, I expect that the American side are looking for some form of tangible trade deal, in particular beans and Boeings, soybeans, agricultural goods, airplanes, gas contracts, etc. And the Chinese will probably send them away happy in that aspect, although whether in the long term the Chinese will abide by those agreements, judging by what happened in the first set of agreements during Trump's first presidency, that's another matter. So, I mean, again, we'll be looking to see if anything comes out on the Iran situation. I would be very surprised if we saw anything there, and I'd be actually very surprised if the Chinese put meaningful pressure on the Iranians, for whom the Iranians, I think they're winning, and they don't want. It's an existential matter for them to see off the Americans. So even though China and Iran have relatively good relations, I don't think they give way to Chinese pressure there. And from the Chinese point of view, I think they think they're winning. The East is rising, the West is falling is a common call. They defeated Trump's tariff ploys through rare earths. I think they want what's basically a truce to continue. They're under no illusion that in the longer term, there are very many anti-China elements within Washington. I don't think they necessarily can trust Trump to be consistent in whatever he says now and what he does later. So let's keep things going as they are while we, and I'm talking in the Chinese point of view here, keep moving forward with our agenda, which is to dominate the science and technology war, and that's how they see it, not so much a trade war, but as a science and technology war and a war between economic systems, which we're winning. And the more time we can buy, and the longer that goes on, the stronger our position will be for the future. So I think that would be my overall
so Charles, you're saying there's been quite a
analysis.
Yeah, and Charles, the dynamics have shifted, haven't they, as you were alluding to, when it comes to these two powers, the United States and China, especially given what the Middle East war has sort of revealed when it comes to how much China can actually take when it comes to oil supplies and how much they have in reserve and have been able to weather the fallout from it with regards to the Strait of Hormuz. When we talk about China then and the strength that they come into this meeting with, another aspect to it, which you alluded to, was the long game. That China is always looking to play the long game, which is something that sort of eludes President Trump when he's always looking for quick wins.
Well, that's true. I mean, it is a question of how long the Chinese can play this game, because they're not winners in all aspects, particularly when it relates to the Middle East. I mean, Iranian oil, not that important to them. I think it's only about 4% of their imports. And in terms of electricity generation, it's only responsible for about 2%. But China has very extensive and increasing investments in the Middle East generally, in the Gulf states, and that is being disrupted. And in the long term, of course, if the global economy suffers, then China, which is reliant very much on exports to the world, will suffer too. So it's they could be. I mean, they do have a reputation for patience and a justifiable one, but there are also pressures on them too.
Charles, really good to get your insight on this today. Thanks very much for your time. Charles Parton there, former British diplomat in China and Hong Kong. And we've got plenty more of our coverage here on BBC News of President Trump's visit to Beijing. We're going to pause for a breather, though, for just a bit. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.